I welcome you here, ma'am. It's a privilege to have you here, and I'm sure it's a blessing for us parents and the teachers, because you have lots of solutions for the problems which we face on a daily basis. We, the parents and the teachers, especially with respect to children, we want to see our children happy. Most of the schools try their best. Parents do their best to see the child happy, to give their best. But when it comes to studies or some behavioral issues, parents find it really difficult to deal with it. So most of the parents have come up with an issue that my child is very silent, he doesn't mingle with anyone, when he is in the school he doesn't talk to his friends, and friends also they don't mingle with him. So they say, what can be done to make my child mingle with everyone, be active and speak to everyone? So what is the solution for this, ma'am?
When we grew up in larger families, and if you noticed, our communities were much closer knit. Like, there would be always a neighbor, somebody that we would always interact with. And I think there were also more independent houses and, compounds within which they would have a lot of houses. So right from the beginning, as children, we had the opportunity to be with people. So it was not something abnormal to do or something difficult for us, because it was naturally molded into us, because it was a natural experience. Now we've become more nuclear as families. There's just one child in the family, and the interaction with similar age groups is less, because what is the probability that within the same apartment complex you will have 7 children of the same age? The probability is very, very low. Having said this, I'd like us to understand that first, when you're talking about a child having to be vocal or should be extroverted, is it a personality need? There will be children who are extroverted, who like being with others, who may be single children also, but still naturally have that in their personality. And then there will be children who are introverted, who like their own company. It's not that they're unhappy being with themselves. They in fact crave for that time when they can be alone. And then there are the ambiverts who can adapt to any situation. So if it's a personality thing, I would ask you to just leave it, number one. Secondly, it's a model behavior. Now, when the child always observes the parents being social, like the father goes out, mingles with people, or the mother has a lot of friends, and the child sees this, it becomes very easy for the child to understand these are the social rules within which I can also operate. But if the parent also is somebody who's always working and doesn't socialize, or is introverted and doesn't enjoy socializing, then that becomes a model for the child. You need to consider these two things. But what I find when most parents ask you this question, they're very silent, is because the child is very vocal at home, but the moment a guest comes home, or when they come into a school setting, the child is not speaking. So when we have to address this problem, we'll need to look at it at a different angle. What happens is, the child is comfortable at home because they know these are the behaviors that I can predict from my parent. So when I do this, my mother's going to do this, or when I do this, my father's going to respond like this. They already have established structures and rules within which they can operate. But when they come into a new setting, to establish these rules, it will take some time. And usually about 6 months is what I find it takes for children. The other problem, when we tell parents, take your child out to play, they usually take them to a park or somebody's house, and then the child doesn't play. There also they're sticking to the mother, sitting with the father, refusing to go. And then they get so frustrated saying, I made so much time to take you out and you didn't play. Children can't just go quickly and then go and adapt into a place. They are not like a wire that you just fix into a socket and switch on and then, the current will pass. It doesn't happen like that. What you need to understand, that when the children go into a social setting, they need to process so much of information of how they can and cannot behave, who's the other person, what are they doing, etc. So initially, it will always be isolated play. There may be a group of children, but your child may still be playing in isolation. Because what they're doing while doing this, they may look up, they may see what is the other child doing, and then go back to their toy, because this is how they're making sense of that new environment. Second, after a couple of weeks of doing this every day, you can't do this every Saturday and then expect the child to suddenly become social. When you do this every day, or at least 4 to 5 times in a week, the child comes into a stage where there's parallel play. There are 2 children playing in the same room, but not with each other. right? And then this will move into associated play. This one will give one toy, this one will give one toy, but they're still not playing together, right? Finally, it becomes cooperative play where they play together, and that's why I said a period of 6 months, because children need to explore and experiment with these social rules before they are actually able to become social. What parents expect is that I'll take him somewhere, and as soon as I take him somewhere, he should start talking. It doesn't happen that way. See, even us as adults, when we go to a new place, we don't immediately go and start speaking. We take time to see, okay, what are the dynamics here? Who's the person I should speak to? Who are the people I should avoid? Who are the people like me? Will I be able to interact with them? Exactly. So we need to experiment, and we need to allow this for children as well. So when you do as a teacher get a question that my child is not mingling with others, I think you could let them know that it goes through stages, and as the child goes through these stages, they develop the confidence to be able to interact with others.
So it's a gradual process.
Yes, and when it's adults, and that's a very big thing, you know, when a guest comes home, he runs into the room, doesn't speak to them. It could also be because the guests that come to India are usually the ones that are asking, okay, now tell me twinkle, twinkle, little star, tell me 1, 2, 3. And the child says, I'm already doing this in school. Now when I come here also, you're testing me. My request to adults, please let children be. You don't need to always test them. Okay, when you observe them playing, they themselves will sing, they will do their own things. Whatever is being taught in school, they'll be playing teacher, teacher. If you observe their play, you will know what's happening in school. You don't need to have tick marks, you know, oh, he knows twinkle, twinkle, little star, he knows Johnny, Johnny, yes, Papa. It's not really required. So as adults, if we give children space, their socialization becomes natural. And that's very important, because when children have good experiences with the adults around them, socialization becomes very, very easy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And the other question which we see is, some children are very sensitive. They say, my child is very sensitive. For small things, if I say no, or don't do that, or do this, and if we force them to do, they become sensitive and they cry, or you know, they don't respond. So they're very sensitive. So what can be done to make my child strong? I don't want my child to cry, or I want my child to face any situation strongly and come out of it. And they also do the comparison, that child didn't cry, my child cried. So that thing happens. Probably the parent as well as the teacher, you know, does this. So what is the solution for this? Why is the child sensitive?
This word sensitive is the most badly utilized word, because to be in touch with emotion is not wrong. It's okay for me to feel any emotion as long as I know how to regulate. So for example, if I'm feeling sad, it's okay to cry, and I need to let my children know it's okay to cry. If I'm feeling angry, I can feel anger as long as I don't hurt another person. Anger is also fine. If I'm feeling jealous, that's also fine, because as human beings, we have the right to experience every emotion. Our role as parents is to understand what emotion it is and help our children to safely express themselves, because emotions, when suppressed, become problems later on in life. And entire generations have been taught. For example, I'm sure when you were growing up, you were probably told as a good girl, you shouldn't get angry. And I remember boys being told, if you're a boy, you shouldn't cry. And so boys are very comfortable with aggression, and girls are very happy with crying. But you know, it's very, very unfortunate that we do not allow certain people to get in touch with emotion. So if a parent is asking us, why should I not allow my child to feel an emotion, or why are they sensitive? Sensitive and strong are not opposites. In fact, a person who can feel emotion and regulate emotion is stronger than the person who suppresses emotion. And we need to start, at least with this generation, letting them know it's okay to feel what I'm feeling, as long as I know how to express that emotion in a way that I'm able to meet needs. And this is very important. Secondly, your question about children crying to get things, that's a completely different thing. That's a manipulation. When I use crying to achieve something, that's not sensitivity or emotional regulation, that's actually manipulation. I'm using a faulty pattern of communication to get something from my parent, and when that happens, parents can definitely say no.
Okay, because
that's not
habit.
Yes, it becomes a habit, it becomes a form of communication, because the child realizes, if I go and ask my mother for a toy, she's not going to give it, but if I roll on the floor and cry, she will give it to me. That is a very unhealthy pattern, and that definitely can be cut down. That cannot be expression of emotion. That's actually a form of manipulation. And we must
be firm.
Yes, there is a firmness. See, in any relationship of love, love comes with boundaries and firmness. Because if you do not have boundaries, it's never love. In any relationship. And that if parents don't understand and they think by giving no, I'm hurting my child, he'll become upset and all those things, they also need to know that these are the limits that will be set for me. Because when there are no limits, the child doesn't understand safety. And that, I think, as parents, we must always set.
Okay, sure. And ma'am, one more question is, parents come to us saying that my child, always fights with his brother or sister. And when they say this, we see the same pattern in the class, like the child might be hurting others, or for probably if the child doesn't get a pencil, or if the child doesn't do the work done told by him, hurting others or pinching or something. So the teachers also have these issues with some children, and also the parents have, saying that my children fight with each other for small things. Probably that toy might be falling there, and when the one child picks, the other child also wants the same toy. So parents are also feeling difficulty, and also teachers are facing difficulty how to, when we leave a child, we keep an eye on that child. Probably the child should not hurt the other one, so we keep the child in the front, keeping an eye, okay, be careful, the child is there. So both the ways we are feeling difficulty. So how to overcome this issue?
I'll answer your question in two parts, because the fighting between brother and sister is a completely different issue, and a child hurting another child in a classroom is a completely different issue, though externally they look the same. Okay? Did you grow up with brothers and sisters?
Yes.
Did you fight with them?
Definitely.
Then you're normal. And the whole point is, as human beings, we have brothers and sisters. To be able to share our experiences, to be able to fight, to be able to make up after a fight, and to be able to understand how to choose our battles in life. It's a natural process, because once or twice the younger one will, provoke the older one, get beaten nicely, and then they'll realize, okay, these times I shouldn't go and trouble my brother or my sister. But at these times I can trouble him because he's already in a weaker position. What we shouldn't do as parents is to go there and try and be the judge. When you go there and be the judge, children never learn how to solve their own problems. Conflicts become larger. To develop good conflict resolution, children need to be able to do it on their own. As long as they are not fighting with acid and knives, it's fine. Because just verbal fights, basic physical fights are completely fine. Children will always have a need to play with each other. So they will find how to resolve it. This is the first thing, and which is why I said I'll answer it in two parts, because this is a normal aspect of growing up as a human being. And only when children resolve conflicts when they're young, they learn to resolve conflicts later on in life. And only when they learn to resolve conflicts in the house, they know how to avoid conflict when outside and how to pick battles when they're outside. You'll understand that. And that's a very important aspect of sibling fights. So I wouldn't ask parents to ever interfere in a fight between two siblings, because that's natural and it's important for being human like that, number one. But when it comes to hurting another child in the classroom, you'll need to look at it in different levels. One, is this a child who doesn't know how to communicate a need or to solve a problem, and as a result is hurting another child? So I don't know how to ask another child, I want your pencil, and I know only to grab from you. Is that why I'm resorting to violence? In that case, I would work on communication and problem solving, and not just controlling the violent behavior. You need to go to the root cause of it. Is this a child who's using violence because violence is being used at home? Because every time there's a problem in the house, the father thrashes the child, or the mother hits the child because he's not writing. So the parent at home is modeling problem solving with might is right. Might is never right. You cannot violate somebody and expect a solution. And this you'll need to check again as a discipline structure. Is the parent using violence to solve problems? Because then the child is also going to model that with somebody weaker. If that's the case, then you work at the level of the family. The third area, is the child violent because there is an underlying neurological issue which requires occupational therapy. Sometimes there are children, and there are a marginal number of children who may have neurological issues because of which they may be violent, which may require an assessment. But as a teacher, now your issue will be, as a teacher, how do I differentiate these three? I always say, look at the learner. When you look at the child, you will know what triggers them. Is this a child who's always getting angry at the same time every day? Then it's organic, which means it's either because of hunger or thirst or some physiological need. And if I can give you an example, in one of the schools that I used to help, there used to be a child, just during the Ramzan fasting, he would become very violent around 11 o'clock. And when we did check his sugar levels, we realized he was hypoglycemic. The sugar levels had dropped, because of which he had become violent. Now this is completely different. You can't have a emotional solution for this, because it's a completely organic physical condition which had a physical medical solution.
Because of the
Hunger, he was not even the hunger, but more the sugar level dropped suddenly, right? This was one. Now when the child has violence in the same place every day, okay, it's always happening inside the activity room. It's always happening in the ground. The child's brain is suddenly being bombarded with a lot of information that they're not able to regulate. And they do use violence as a way to come out of this. In that case, I would reduce the number of distractions within a class. Very often what happens is, in the new infrastructure of schools, we tend to hang a lot of things, too many colors everywhere. It's too overwhelming for a child's brain to also pay attention to this and your voice and the new learning. Sometimes reducing all of these things also enhances calm behaviors in children. That's what we call a sensory overload. That would be the second reason. If it happens in the same subject every day, it happens every time in the maths period, it happens always whenever addition is given, then it's telling you the child doesn't have a particular skill, and as a result is having emotions that they don't know how to regulate and is resorting to violence. In that case, I would work on the skill level. Finally, if the child is violent in the presence of a certain person, always does this when a particular child is sitting next to him, or is always in a particular teacher's class very violent, then it's a relational issue. You'll need to solve it at the level of the relationship. So as a teacher, when you observe for these factors, you will sort of realize how to deal with the violence. And control is not the solution to violence. You'll need to help the child to develop new behaviors which will take the place of the violence. So for example, you know he's going to be violent in this class if you've observed sufficiently, and it's because he's not able to do mathematics. In the mathematics period, you can have the child sitting down beside you and supporting him a little more so that he'll be able to manage it. But if it's because of a person, then the person needs to work with the child, developing what is called a connection ritual. So I spend time with the child, helping him understand that I'm not essentially trying to put him down or being partial or whatever. I am trying to help you through this. So when you build a connection on which the relationship can be built, the violence reduces.
Most of the times they change the places, probably, a weaker child, as you told, the weaker child is with this, so they tend to show their power. So if we change the place, will it solve, or with the child where there's a problem, probably the child is being hit by one child, that child's place, if it's changed, will it help, ma'am? Or
I really don't know, because I'm not in the classroom at that time, right? And I don't want to give a generalized thing that a place change would help it, but I would always see what works. See, nothing works the first time, nothing works all the time, nothing works for all children. And you'll need to, as a teacher, try different things, see what is the response. And with children, you will see immediate changes. And then when you build upon that, it becomes a habit. That would be the best way to work with it.
okay, thank you so much for your valuable answers, and I'm sure all the parents would definitely get benefit out of it. Thank you so much.